LiveWire presents its second model, and that's it, the S2 Del Mar. Del Mar meaning from the sea, a fitting name as we were out and about in Barcelona and the surrounding area today testing the new e-bike. Stay tuned, it's going to be exciting. The S2 Del Mar, the second bike in the LiveWire lineup after the one which used to be called Harley-Davidson LiveWire. But LiveWire is now its own brand, the sub-brand of Harley-Davidson. And now the S2 Del Mar is the first bike to use the new platform, which is the Aero platform. I think it's a very exciting concept because other manufacturers already have this in their superbikes. But here we now also have it in the electric bike, where the main element, the supporting element, is only the battery and the electric motor. This means that we have a subframe at the front where the steering head is bolted on, then a rear frame that is screwed on, and the swing arm, which is located here. You can use this platform to build, and that means that in the future we might find other models from LiveWire that are built on this platform. But let's move on to the model we have today, the S2 Del Mar. Here is the battery, which has a capacity of 10.5 kilowatt hours and passes the power on to the electric motor. It has a rated output of 40 horsepower and a maximum output of 84 horsepower and a huge torque of 263 Newton meters. That always sounds very, very original for such electric motors, but of course you always have to put it into perspective. That's just the output of the full torque, which of course isn't always the case, but it's a figure that you can brag about at the regulars table, and that sounds really powerful. And it's also powerful, as I found out today. Apart from that, we have a relatively classic naked bike in flat tracker style. I really like the way it looks with the 19-inch tires front and rear. We have a 130 tire at the front and a 140 tire at the rear. Of course, this has its own characteristics in terms of handling, but I'll come to that later. But as it stands, I think it's very, very pretty, and I've got a nice blue one in front of me. It's also available in black and gray. In terms of components, we have an upside down fork at the front with adjustable rebound and spring preload. At the rear, a single shock absorber, also adjustable in the rebound stage with spring preload adjustment and a seat height of 825 millimeters. That may sound a little high at first, but LiveWire places this S2 Del Mar more in the urban area. It's supposed to be A to B commuter vehicle that you can take out into the mountains after work or university, where we happen to be, and have a bit of fun. In other words, it's less of a touring bike or the most radical naked bike. It's more of an everyday bike that looks good and is really fun to ride. We started today in the city, so we set off from the hotel in Barcelona and were able to play around a bit with this bike because we have 4 riding modes on board. We have Sport, we have Road, Eco and Rain, which are all listed here. And then we also have 2 freely configurable riding modes. But in the city, I was actually constantly driving in eco mode today because then you have such an electric feeling that I really like, and I can actually only operate the whole vehicle with the gas tap. So you would have to say with the power button these days. That means I have such strong braking that I no longer have to brake. For example, when I roll up to the traffic lights, I close the throttle, the deceleration kicks in, supplies electricity back into the battery and slows me down at the same time. I think that's a very strange driving experience. You have to get used to it, but I think it's really nice because it changes the way I ride the bike. It makes me ride with much more foresight. I just have this feeling that I want to ride as efficiently as possible, and especially in the city with all the stop and go traffic, it's really an incentive to ride in an energy efficient way. I'm 1.75 meters tall, so let me give you a quick demonstration of the seating position. I fit on it very well because although we have a seat height of 825 millimeters, the seat is relatively high. That means I can get both feet on the ground, and I was honestly surprised. The seat looks relatively narrow. It's also relatively hard padded, but not uncomfortable. We've been on the road for a long time today and nothing hurts. I generally sit very neutrally on it, have a wide handlebar in front of me, and can navigate it really nicely through the city. Handlebar end mirrors are always a question of whether you like them or not. I'm not really a fan of it, but it just goes nicely with the look of the bike. When I'm sitting here, I have these wide handlebars in front of me with lots of controls on both sides. And I have to say, it can be a bit overwhelming at first, but once you get used to it, you have a mode switch, which we used most often to change riding modes, and cruise control if you need and want it. Electric vehicles are almost always already equipped with cruise control. It works well. I used it once briefly on the highway. And yes, that means you can get there more relaxed on my way to work on the highway with cruise control. What I didn't like so much about the handlebars was, quite honestly, the blinker switch. On the one hand, it is hidden relatively far down, as is the horn. I would have liked the two buttons in particular to be more prominent here on the handlebars. And my problem with the indicator switch was that whenever I wanted to deactivate it by pressing it in, I would only flash in one direction again. So that's a bit too finely worked for me. I would like it to have a better feel in the future so that I can operate it more easily. Then, after the city today, we drove out into the countryside, into the mountains around Barcelona. And LiveWire promises that it should also be a motorcycle that you can have fun with after work. And I have to say, it works well. I then switched to sport mode. I also have a very high level of recuperation there. In other words, it gives me back a bit of the feeling of engine braking when I'm rolling towards a turn. That's what I want with sporty driving. But then I also release more and more power. And then you feel this electric fascination. Of course, I know that everyone who likes to ride motorcycles will say that the sound is just off, but I think an electric motor has a very unique sound that is a real joy. This high-pitched whirring is a lot of fun for me personally. And above all, I have power and torque that is immediately available. And that is also very fascinating. It's really fun. And if you're still against it, I wouldn't write it off immediately. Take it for a test drive, because you have to experience how I use that kind of electric punch. It's a real pleasure. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 19-inch tires front and rear. I think that looks very, very nice. So this flat tracker style is very good. But you also realize that it's not the best concept when it comes to agility. So if we had a bike with 17-inch front and rear wheels, it would be much more playful and easy to take corners. It would take a bit of effort to convince the rider that it would really corner well. But once you're in the bend, it's really stable and easy to steer. But I missed that first agility a bit, but that's clear with a tire concept like this. Of course, you also want to look good. Electromobility is also very important when it comes to charging and range. I don't want to lie to you about that. So in a press test like this, we don't really have the opportunity to see what the range is like. Our driving here is not what you do in everyday life. We are still rather sporty on the road. We accelerate, brake and pick up speed a lot to see how it responds. In other words, I don't want to make any promises about the range. LiveWire states a combined range of 138 kilometers. I hope we can catch up this year to test whether this is really true or how close you can get to the range. But when it comes to charging, we have installed a Type 2 plug. And the charging times are different depending on the charging station. I'll write the exact charging times in the description. I don't want to give you all the figures now, or I'll write them again in the report. So yes, my first impression of the Harley-Davidson LiveWire is very positive, I have to say. I really enjoy riding this S2 Del Mar, but my day is not over yet. We're just at the lunch break above Barcelona. Now we're going down the mountain again and past the Sagrada Familia again. So a nice touring program on the S2 Del Mar. And I'll get back to you in the evening with a final summary of the Del Mar. Yes, the day is coming to an end, and I also want to share my final impressions before I come to the conclusion. Another thing I've noticed is that they always say electric motorcycles have no soul, they have no pulse. The LiveWire does, because as soon as you start it, there is a constant pulsation in the vehicle, a real heartbeat, and that shows you that it's on. And it's also nicely marked on the handle with a little heartbeat. That means you know when the machine is on, and it really does have a soul. Another thing I noticed very positively now in the city was the weight distribution. We have 198 kilograms ready to ride. Sounds like a lot, but the center of gravity is pleasantly low. You feel very present on the bike. You have everything underneath you, which also means that I can get up slowly. When you're riding, you never have to put your feet on the ground. I can control it really well. Especially in eco mode, I have a really pleasant throttle response. That means I can really feel my way slowly in traffic. It's not nervous at all. It remains very stable on course as you wind your way through the city. I also have to say that I don't find the 198 kilograms so bad anymore. Because, as I said earlier, the seat is narrow. This means that Maneuvering is also very, very simple and very easy. Price. This is also always very important with a vehicle like this. In Germany, it costs 18,490 euros. That's without any financial subsidies. I would ask you to find out what the situation is in your respective region. And now I want to come to my last sentence, to my conclusion. Who should buy a LiveWire S2 Del Mar? Well, first of all, I would say everyone should buy one, test drive one of these, just to get a feel for the electric theme, to get closer to the whole thing. It's a really cool and pretty bike for that, and it rides really well. And apart from that, who would I recommend it to? Quite simply, people who ride in the city and have a daily commute and don't want to switch to a scooter for reasons of looks or taste, but want to be on the move electrically. It's a really cool electric motorcycle that's easy to use, very handy in the city, and offers a range. LiveWire claims 138 kilometers, which is more than enough for everyday commuting. Yes, that was my video about the new LiveWire S2 Del Mar. Let me know in the comments what you think of it and whether you'd like to test ride one of these. I can highly recommend it to you. It's a truly unique experience to ride one of these. Then of course, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I would be happy, of course. And then I'll see you in the next video. See you soon. Bye.